currently we're fighting a case about a long-term residence permit, because for some reason we haven't finished it yet. We're going via the embassy. It's been via London, and now it's gone to the EU for some opinions about a long-term residence permit for a Brit in the Czech Republic who was offered a job in Slovakia and asked for a residence permit, a long-term residence permit, and was refused, has appealed and was refused again, because according to officials in the Czech ministry, because he had permanent residence before Brexit actually came in, he has retained all his rights of free movement and free work, free ability to work in other countries, in other EU countries, because he had permanent residence before, and this according to Czech legislation. We think it's nonsense. Watch this space and we'll find out. But other than that, it's been pretty smooth here for casework.
There's one particular case of an elderly woman whose husband has complete dementia, but he needs to go into a home, but the Maltese authorities have decided that they need permanent residency. They're denying that the one covers healthcare. I've presented them with the information from Your Europe. It's been passed on to the FCDO that the lawyers are dealing with, but I'm again stuck in the middle with I have very desperate people that are trying to get their permanent residency and access to the healthcare when it shouldn't be an issue in the first place. The women don't have a record of spending, so trying to prove this has been quite an issue. A lot of the men will get permanent residencies and their wives or partners won't, because they can't see that it was their money being spent. So there's a problem there. So yeah, they said to me, that's okay, you can pass these cases on. But the first case I passed on, it's been quite a few weeks, and she's still desperately at home trying to look after her husband, and nothing's happened.
With EIE, casework has been varied, ranging from late applicants to navigating the resources detailing rights under the Withdrawal Agreement, which can differ significantly from those under national law. It can get confusing. WA Article 18.1, issuing of residence documents, requirement for smooth administration, meaning you get your card on time. 14.2, entry-exit rights. 16, accumulation of time towards permanent status. Building 2, 15.1, right of permanent residence. EU Charter Rights, Article 7, respect for private and family life, 21, non-discrimination, including nationality, and importantly, 45, freedom of movement, specifically how to stay compliant respecting residency status for those under 5 years in Sweden. As we wind down the ICE project, we're approaching an important period. Most WA beneficiaries have 5 years in Sweden by now. Most questions we get today are about this. It's not surprising there is very low awareness about the process because, like the registration process in 2021, there is zero communication from the Migration Authority about this. Our main message continues to be, get your permanent status recognized before it's time to replace your current card.
I would like to talk about a few key points that have come up during work on the ICE project in Germany. The first point is about types of status. Authorities have shown a tendency to push spousal residency status to WA beneficiaries who have a German spouse as the best type of residency recognition and as an alternative to WA status. We have seen examples where people were issued with spousal residency cards and have only more recently realised that they also have a right to a WA card. It has been hard for some people to convince the authorities of their WA rights. WA residency gives different rights to spousal status, which is a German national immigration status, and is independent of the relationship. It is not the case that a spousal status is better in all respects. A simple example. WA permanent residents may be absent for up to 5 years from Germany, whereas this is not the case with spousal residency status. On the other hand, a spouse can normally move with a German partner to another EU country, which is clearly not the case with WA status. The right to more than one status is clearly documented in German government guidelines, but this is not always recognised by the issuing authorities in the regions. WA beneficiaries have had to stand their ground whilst being challenged and bring multiple forms of evidence in order to establish this right. People have also been having a hard time getting their status updated to permanent as specified under Article 15 of the WA. This has come up in multiple different local authorities, and people are having to argue their individual case. The second point is about issues engaging with and sometimes needing to challenge issuing authorities. Many people are nervous faced with official bureaucracy, and more so when they're worried that key rights may not be recognised. It can be daunting, even frightening, for people who have to represent their rights in the face of disbelief or ignorance, and unfortunately, this is proving necessary. For some, like a bedridden and disabled stroke patient, such a task is impossible. A third point, which has become very visible during the life of the project and which has compounded the difficulties already mentioned, is a loss of institutional memory. Many issuing authorities in the regions seem to have lost track of withdrawal agreement provisions and rights. Whether because staff have moved on or for other reasons, there seems now a tendency to default towards the rules of other German immigrant provisions. Individuals, including those who may be vulnerable or uncertain of their rights, are faced with a lack of adequate knowledge on the part of local officials, and a need to cite chapter and verse of the WA, German government guidance, EU guidance, and Your Europe information to evidence their rights.
When they went along and registered as EU citizens in 2020, which is exactly what they should do, they were told, you will get a letter telling you what to do next year.
Yeah.
And so they waited for letters,
Yeah.
and letters did not arrive for the majority of people who moved to Denmark in 2020. For some reason, everyone who arrived after the end of January 2020 didn't get any letters and didn't get any other notifications telling them that they had to reapply for their residency under the withdrawal agreement. And so we were in this situation where we suddenly found ourselves, people were coming into the country, having visited the UK for Christmas, at the border being asked, where is your residency card? And they didn't have one, and they didn't even know that they were supposed to apply for one. Contacting us saying, what is this card that I'm supposed to have applied for? And I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So within...
And were some of them denied entry back into Denmark?
Luckily, in the case of Denmark, they were allowed back in the country and told that they needed to apply late.
Okay.
And it was set out very clearly on the website what people had to do. That wasn't the case in Sweden, for example, where there were people that were turned away at the border and they had to fly back to... I remember a case where there was a guy who was from Scotland and he was made to go back to Scotland. In Denmark, they were let in on the basis that they could do a late application.
At the beginning of the rollout back in early 2021, I could see there were systemic problems coming up in various offices in Greece, and that I couldn't solve, that I had no legal position to solve, and so I phoned him, and we started really working. Not very often. I would phone him up every 3 or 4 months whenever I saw that there were problems, and we would work together to solve the problems.
Yes. From our side, we were receiving calls from not only from Withdrawal, but generally from we're running still the helpline in regards to the resident documents issued to withdrawal beneficiaries. So one of the person that contacted me one day was Mrs. Cross, and then we started to have a, let's say, cooperation in regards to the reporting of issues that have been raised to our police authorities and see how we could find solutions if there are such problems.
I moved to Greece in July 2023, so that's after the Brexit situation.
Yeah.
Having had residency under the Withdrawal Agreement in Spain for 10 years, 12 years actually. So I had permanent residency there with my husband, and we decided we wanted to move back to Spain because we'd been here in the early 2000s because of sailing. And our boat was in Greece, so we looked at moving, and I guess we were tricked, I would say, into thinking that this was the place to retire to, because so many websites tell you you can get a retirement permit that is easily renewable every 2 years. In fact, that's not the case. Yes, you can't actually renew it, but you can start again from scratch. And that's not something that any of the promotional websites tell you about. So we'd lived an easy life when Britain was in the EU, and then a more difficult start to the post-Brexit era. But we managed it, and we were integrated into the community. So that was easy. Yeah.
And what's kind of your situation at the moment in Greece? What's your
Okay, so we've come in not under the Withdrawal Agreement, we've come in under national legislation, and the national legislation requires a certain amount of pension income for retirees, and we came in on a level that required €2,400 a month per couple, and that gave us a 2-year permit. In April of last year, April 2024, the government decided to change that threshold to €4,200 a month per couple. So you can't just magic up another load of pension. So that has put us in a position where we don't have that income. If we can't get residency here, then our option is to go back to Spain, because we can be, having had a permanent residency permit there, we can be 5 consecutive years out of the country before losing that status. And although we don't want to go back to Spain, we want to stay in Greece, that is something we might have to consider.
A UK national with permanent residence in Spain since 2009 was incorrectly denied their rights under the Withdrawal Agreement by regional Spanish authorities responsible for implementing national residency laws. Having resided in Denmark from late 2018, they returned to Spain in August 2023 after 4 years and 10 months with their child, and were told that their WA rights were lost. The case came through to us in Spain through Danish National Group. The issue stemmed from a misinterpretation of WA Article 15.3, which stipulates that PR status is only lost if a person is absent for more than 5 years. The authorities made several errors, initially applying the shorter 2-year EU absence rule for EU citizens, and then calculating the absence period based solely on employment dates rather than legal residency to reach a period in excess of 5 years. The individual's legal position was very strong. Their primary argument rested on the 5-year absence rule. They also provided proof of flights to Spain between 2018 and 2023. These visits align with the principles set by a key EU Court of Justice case, where even brief physical presence was ruled sufficient to interrupt an absence period for residency purposes. This principle has also been successfully argued in other EU countries. The individual maintained that conserving permanent resident status is through legal residence, not merely employment, also making the authorities' calculation method invalid. Despite 2 administrative appeals by their lawyer, the regional authorities refused to change their decision, offering the individual a temporary arraigo familiar permit, a significant downgrade of their rights, with the continued residence dependent on their child, a Spanish national. The authorities suggested that the individual could appeal the decision before the courts, which would have added to the already significant costs incurred. Thankfully, the issue was resolved swiftly and favourably after escalating the matter. The combination of strong legal grounding and strategic advocacy proved decisive. The key steps that led to the positive outcome: legal validation. The individual checked their legal position with their lawyer and received an official opinion from Your Europe Advice, which agreed with their interpretation of the law. Advocacy group involvement. They engaged with ICE participating citizens' rights organisations in Denmark and Spain, and British in Europe escalated the cause by reporting it directly to the European Commission. European Commission intervention. The Commission contacted the national Spanish authorities to seek general clarification on the correct interpretation of the withdrawal agreement, specifically Articles 11 and 15 regarding residency rights and absences. Following this intervention, the regional authorities in Spain resolved the case in a matter of days, and the individual received their renewed permanent residence card shortly after, fully restoring their rights under the withdrawal agreement.